We've all been there, right? Chasing something, that next big thing, that promotion, thinking this will be it, this will bring that lasting happiness.
But it fades, doesn't it? That feeling. And then we're back searching again.
Exactly. Well, today we're looking into some really deep wisdom from the Mundaka Upanishad, specifically part 3 of the teachings we've been exploring. It tackles this whole pursuit.
Part 3. It really digs into the nature of reality, yes, but also our own inner selves, who we fundamentally are.
And we know you listening in, you want to grasp these big ideas, get those aha moments, but maybe without wading through absolutely everything. You want the core stuff.
Yeah, efficiently but thoroughly. So that's our mission today, really, to pull out the key insights from this part of the Upanishad.
We'll be talking about things like, well, why we often feel this background hum of dissatisfaction.
And the limits, the limitations of trying to find ultimate happiness in purely external things, even seemingly good things.
And ultimately, what this ancient text suggests is the real path to fulfillment, the kind that sticks. Okay, so let's start with that feeling, that kind of nagging sense that something's off or missing. One of the transcripts mentions this idea of potential self-rejection.
Ah, yes. The idea that it's sort of always there, potentially. And external events, well, they don't cause the unhappiness, they just trigger it.
Yeah.
Something latent within us.
So it's less about this happened, therefore I'm unhappy, and more like this happened and it activated this inner feeling about myself.
That's a good way to put it. The focus shifts inward. It's about our internal landscape, how we feel about ourselves fundamentally, not just blaming the outside world. We tend to project, don't we?
We really do. And if that's the case, if the root isn't purely external, then maybe constantly chasing external rewards isn't the answer. Which brings us to the limits of achievements and even, well, religious practices.
Right. The idea of punya karma, meritorious deeds, or rituals. The texts acknowledge, yes, these can lead to certain kinds of pleasant results, even heavenly pleasures.
Sounds pretty good.
It does. But, and this is crucial, they aren't free. There's a cost, and more importantly, they are exhaustible. They run out. You use up the credit, so to speak.
The transcript mentioned you have to pay the price for it, and it described this whole hierarchy of pleasure realms. Gandharvaloka, Pitraloka, Devaloka, Indraloka, getting geometrically better.
Yeah, quite a detailed cosmology of enjoyment, but the punchline is always their impermanence. Karma itself, whether it's worldly actions or religious ones, is described as limited parichinam.
Limited. Why limited?
Because the means we use our bodies, materials, time, energy, they're all finite. And when those finite results, those pleasures, inevitably end, the text points out there can be pain, the pain of loss or falling back.
Okay, so it's like a temporary high with a potential crash. The text also mentioned Ista and Purpa, things like sacrifices and charitable works, building wells, schools. Good things, surely.
Definitely good things. But the potential mistake, the text suggests, is seeing them as the ultimate goal. They're often steps, perhaps valuable steps, but still operating within that limited framework of cause and effect, karma. They don't necessarily address that core dissatisfaction.
So they're good, but maybe not the final answer to the big questions, which connects back to efficient learning, right? Knowing what the ultimate goal is helps put these other things in perspective.
Precisely. And this leads naturally into the distinction the Upanishad makes between two kinds of knowledge, Paravidya and Aparavidya.
Okay, higher and lower knowledge.
You got it. Aparavidya, the lower knowledge, encompasses basically everything we usually think of as knowledge. Rituals, sciences, arts, worldly information. The karma kanda part of the Vedas.
So like my job skills, knowing history, how to fix my bike, all that.
All that. Extremely useful for navigating the world, no doubt. But then there's Paravidya, the higher knowledge.
And
That's the knowledge of Brahman, the ultimate reality, self-knowledge. This, the Upanishad claims, is what truly liberates, what frees us from that cycle of seeking and dissatisfaction.
Brahman, that sounds absolutely central. Can we unpack that a bit? What is Brahman, according to these teachings?
Okay, so Brahman is presented as the fundamental cause karanam of everything, and the entire universe is the effect, vikaryam.
Cause and effect. Okay.
And Brahman's nature is described as eka sardanitya satyam, one essence, eternal, and the ultimate truth or reality.
One eternal truth.
And the world.
The world, in contrast, is anekasara anityasatam. Many without a core essence of its own, impermanent and ultimately an unreal appearance compared to Brahman.
Wow. So one unchanging reality versus the constantly changing world we experience?
Exactly, and it goes deeper. Brahman is said to have 4 intrinsic natures, or svarapams. Sat, pure existence.
Yeah.
Chit, pure consciousness. Ananda, pure bliss or happiness. And Ananta, infinite, limitless.
Sat Chit Ananda, I've heard that. And the focus here is on, the text really emphasizes Chit, pure consciousness, as the fundamental nature. God, or Brahman, is consciousness.
Pure consciousness. That's a lot to take in. How does the variety of the world, all this stuff, come from that single pure consciousness?
Through Maya. Maya is described as the unmanifest potential within Brahman. Like, the potential for all names and forms exists within consciousness before they manifest. Think of the ocean holding the potential for infinite waves.
Ah, okay. So Maya isn't exactly illusion in a negative sense, but more like the creative power or potential within Brahman that makes the world appear.
That's a very good way to look at it.
Right.
It's the mechanism through which the one appears as the many. And understanding this unity beneath the diversity, that can be a real aha moment.
Definitely. So if Brahman is the ultimate reality, and it's consciousness, and maybe we are connected to that, how do we, realize this? How do we know it for ourselves?
Through self-inquiry, Atma-vichara, the text poses this pivotal question. By knowing what single cause does everything that is caused become known?
Right. Like you said earlier, the root understanding.
Exactly. And the answer is, know Brahman, know the self. Because the self is that ultimate cause. Knowing your true nature illuminates the nature of everything else. It's the ultimate efficiency in knowledge acquisition, if you like.
Okay. Now, the terms jivatma and paramatma often come up. Individual soul and universal soul. How do they fit with Brahman?
The teaching is quite direct here. The jivatma, the individual self, is fundamentally non-different from paramatma, the universal self. Its essential nature, its karanam swarupa, is Brahman.
Non-different, so like.
Like gold in ornaments. The ornaments, necklaces, rings look different, have different names and functions, but their essence is gold. Or think of waves in the ocean. Each wave is distinct for a moment, but its essence is ocean water.
So underneath the individuality, the essence is the same universal reality.
That is the core teaching. And this Brahman, this self, isn't just some abstract principle out there. The text says it's guhayam nihitam, situated in the cave of the heart, within your own being.
Right here, right now.
Deep within, which leads to the great pronouncements, the Mahavakyams like Am Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, or I am consciousness. It's a statement of realized identity.
That really shifts the perspective. From seeing ourselves as separate individuals to potentially realizing this vast, interconnected reality.
It's a profound shift. And the outcome of truly realizing this internally is moksha, liberation.
Freedom from
the cycle of samsara, birth, death, rebirth. Freedom from fundamental suffering and limitation. It's transcending mortality by realizing your immortal nature as consciousness.
And how does one walk this path? Is it just intellectual understanding?
Intellect is a tool, but it's not enough on its own. The texts stress the importance of ethical grounding. Truthfulness, satyam, is explicitly mentioned as paving the way satana pantavitaro devayana. The path of the gods is laid out by truth.
So living ethically is foundational.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
Absolutely. And then there's the preparation, the satana chatushtaya sampati, the fourfold qualifications. Briefly, viveka, discrimination between the real and the unreal, the eternal and the temporary. Vairagya, dispassion towards fleeting pleasures. Shatsampati's 6 inner virtues like calmness, self-control, faith. And mumukshutva, an intense, burning desire for liberation itself.
That sounds like serious inner work. Preparation for what?
Preparation for jnana yoga, the path of knowledge. This path involves deep study and contemplation of these truths.
Is this only for monks or renunciates sannyasins?
While jnana yoga is traditionally associated with sannyasa, the texts acknowledge that householders, people living active lives in the world, can also pursue it. It requires dedicating focused time for shravanam, hearing or studying the teachings, mananam, reflecting deeply upon them, questioning and resolving doubts, and nididhihasanam, sustained meditation on the truth, I am Brahman.
Hearing, reflecting, meditating.
Yes, it's a process of internalizing the knowledge until it's not just an idea, but a lived reality. This can lead to jivanmukti, liberation while still living in the body, and eventually vidyahamukti, final liberation when the body drops away.
And the key is knowledge, not just good deeds.
The ultimate key is knowledge, yes. Good deeds purify the mind and create favorable conditions. They are important stepping stones. But liberation itself comes from knowing your true nature as Brahman, as consciousness. It dispels the fundamental ignorance that causes suffering.
There are a couple of specific mantras mentioned too. One about the power of a jnani, a knower.
Ah, yes. Mantra 3.1.10 suggests that whatever world a purified person of true knowledge mentally conceives, they obtain it. It speaks to the power that comes with realization and underscores why seeking guidance from such a person is valuable.
And another one, 3.2.3, about how the self is attained.
Right? That one's crucial. It says the self cannot be attained by mere intellectual study, not by intelligence, not even by much learning. It is attained only by the one whom the self chooses, which practically means it's attained by the one who intensely desires liberation above all else, who chooses moksha as their primary goal. It's about that deep longing, that mumukshutva we mentioned. The self reveals itself to the one who truly seeks it.
So it takes more than just casual interest. It requires a real commitment, a deep yearning.
Absolutely. The whole journey, as laid out in these teachings, culminates in that direct, unwavering realization, that consciousness, I am.
Wow. Okay, so let's try to wrap up the essence of part 3 here. It seems the core message is that the restlessness we feel often stems from within, from a kind of inner dissatisfaction or self-misunderstanding.
Exactly. And chasing external validation or pleasure, even through good deeds or rituals, while perhaps beneficial in some ways, won't ultimately solve that core issue because those results are inherently limited and permanent.
The real answer, according to this wisdom, lies in understanding the true nature of reality Brahman, this single, eternal, conscious essence, and recognizing that as our own self.
Through Paravidya, the higher knowledge, attained via self-inquiry, ethical living, reflection, and deep meditation, realizing I am consciousness. That's the path to genuine, lasting liberation, moksha.
So it really shifts the focus inward, doesn't it? From trying to fix the world to understanding the self. For you listening, maybe the takeaway is this. If your fundamental nature, the very bedrock of reality, is pure, limitless consciousness and bliss, what does that imply?
What does that imply about where your deepest desires truly point? Or what the ultimate source of fear might be? Something deep to reflect on, isn't it?
Definitely food for thought. Perhaps this glimpse into part 3 makes you want to explore the Mundaka Upanishad more fully, or Vedanta in general. There's so much more there.
There really is.
Yeah.
But hopefully this conversation has given you a useful map, a shortcut to some truly profound ideas about who you are and what real fulfillment means.